And for more on this, we have Sheldon Starrett with us in studio. He is a community organizer for a group called Keep Richmond Safe. And good morning to you.
Oh, good morning, Stephen. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it. Were you surprised by the housing minister's announcement that this was going ahead?
I wasn't surprised. They did say they were going to suspend it. They had gone silent for a while, but we were expecting them to return to it some point after the provincial election.
Now, you organized protests last summer. Tell me what was behind those protests.
So when we found out about this low-barrier housing, permanent supportive housing, we had concerns because there is already a track record of 2 temporary modular housing sites in Richmond, and that this site would be the replacement for both of them.
Right.
However, there was no language about it being low barrier, but we knew the people from the TMH sites were most likely going to be relocated to this site. And there were some issues with public disorder and negative impacts on the neighborhoods where these previous sites or these current sites are. And we felt that the city had failed to mitigate the negative and harmful impacts of those sites.
Okay, and what did you see as the negative and harmful impacts of those sites?
Well, since it went in around 2020, that's when we started noticing more open drug use in the neighborhood, discarded drug paraphernalia, needles, pipes, sometimes people breaking in or trespassing onto private property, breaking into cars, into mail rooms, stealing mail. Sometimes some of the strata presidents would email the TMH operators, depending on the manager at the time. Some were more responsive, and they would either confirm whether it was a resident or a guest of a resident and whether they were welcome there or not. So sometimes it was residents of these sites. Sometimes it was guests of the residents coming from Vancouver or elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. And this was then was this a notable increase then in those sorts of activities that came along with the construction of these temporary modular housing sites?
Yes, one strata president's lived there since my building first went up in 2010. So there was none of these problems at all before the TMH went up. In the 10 years, there was only one incident unrelated. So it was a clear difference.
And what did you and your organization ask the city to do as far as mitigation goes?
So we've asked the city to enforce the good neighbor agreements that residents are required to sign. But we do know the city only has so much power. The housing operators kind of fall under the jurisdiction, I guess, of BC Housing. And one thing, the RCMP has increased more patrols of the area. They can't be there, of course, 24/7. You never know when things will happen. But things have still been going on even since the renewal. In 2023 was when the TMH was renewed. And the city had promised that they would do more to mitigate. But we haven't really seen too much more. Rain City Housing does not believe in having punishment as a way of dealing with some of the problems that some of their residents cause. So we kind of are at loggerheads of what to do about this.
So this is a low barrier shelter, which means, people who might have substance use issues, drug addiction, so on, will end up living there.
Yes.
But there is no supervised consumption site on site.
No, there's not a supervised consumption site because I believe that requires a nurse or medical supervision. What we have heard is that there is peer-to-peer overdose prevention services on site, so probably a room. And same with Kitsilano Coalition when they had their issue with Arbutus. They had found there was also on the plans a medical room, which they didn't outright say it would be used for peer-to-peer overdose prevention, but that is what they found out would happen in Arbutus, and that's what we believe would that medical room would be designated for at the new Cambie site.
So it would, from your point of view, would having a safe consumption site or a medical room or whatever you want to call it inside the project, would that be good or would that be bad?
Well, I know many of the residents in Richmond, they feel very strongly belt this issue. They don't want that. For us, we want the open drug use in the streets and sites surrounding the area to stop. That's what we would. I mean, most of us, I guess, it's better if they do it in a site like that inside than if they're doing it on the streets. However, the low barrier housing, not every single person in there is addicted to drugs.
Of course.
And there are some residents in there who, apparently Laura Galanders was here yesterday, and she said only 5 of the 40 residents are not drug users. And some of them have openly said they feel unsafe in those sites just from other people using drugs and also from the people that are coming there to deal drugs. And they want to get out of there, but there is nowhere else for them to go.
I'm just wondering if, as you suggested, I mean, if there was a safe consumption site or a supervised consumption site on site, would that help with some of the open drug use and some of the paraphernalia that you're finding around?
It hasn't helped with the Alderbridge temporary modular house to date. So I have concerns, even if that is accommodated, that it won't stop the open drug use in the surrounding area. As there's been many videos, there's a group of neighbors that have shared videos called Neighbors of Richmond. And they find these people sometimes in private property. The hotels around have had to invest in more security, at the condos as well, because people would come into hallways to use drugs in their corridors and any excess rooms they have access to.
Well, we have people who use drugs in every neighborhood in the Lower Mainland. What do you think ought to be done then to address concerns like the concerns of your community?
Well, I have been talking a lot to that Dr. Julian Sommers at SFU on this issue, and I do believe we need to adhere more strictly to the 4 pillars approach. I feel that in Vancouver we've kind of gone too much into the just harm reduction, and not enough has been done on drug prevention, education, enforcement, and also on treatment. And I do think we need more treatment. A lot of people are actually open and supportive of treatment, perhaps even secure treatment for those who have more, more difficult situations dealing with this. But I also realize that treatment in Canada, it's very short. It's a very short window. Then people sometimes end up back on the street and relapse. So we need to look at Portugal and see. We might have to do longer treatment and then have transitional housing for them after their treatment. But I think that housing needs to be drug-free.
Sheldon, we'll leave it there this morning. Thank you for coming in and sharing your thoughts with us. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you.